I used to roll my eyes so hard at the word manifestation that my coworker Dana stopped saying it around me. And then, 11 months later, I caught myself writing my goals on a sticky note before bed, like some kind of hypocrite. Something happened in between. I still don't know if I fully understand it. I worked in logistics back then, at a mid-sized shipping company outside Columbus. My job was mostly spreadsheets and phone calls, tracking delayed freight, smoothing over angry clients. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady, and I liked steady. I'd built my whole identity around being the practical one. The realist. If you couldn't measure it, test it, or put it on a chart, I didn't trust it. Dana sat 2 desks over. She was sharp, good at her job, the kind of person who caught errors before they became problems. But she also kept a little notebook on her desk where she wrote things like abundance and I am worthy of ease, and every few weeks she'd mention something she'd manifested, a parking spot, a raise, a good doctor's appointment. I used to think it was harmless nonsense, the kind of thing people believe because believing feels better than not believing. I remember one Tuesday, she got a callback for a job she'd applied to almost as a joke, some marketing role way above her experience level. She wasn't even surprised. She just said, "Yeah, I knew that one would come through," like she'd ordered it off a menu. I laughed it off, but something about her calm certainty bothered me more than I wanted to admit. Not because I thought she was right. Because I couldn't explain why it kept working out for her. That's the part one wants to be honest about. It wasn't one dramatic moment that changed my mind. It was small, irritating coincidences that piled up until I couldn't keep dismissing them as luck. The first one I actually paid attention to happened during a slow week in March. I'd been quietly frustrated at work, feeling passed over, convinced my manager didn't notice the extra hours I put in. Out of pure boredom one night, I wrote down 3 sentences in my phone's notes app. Nothing spiritual. More like a private complaint turned into a wish list. I want to be recognized for my work. I want to stop feeling invisible here. I want an opportunity that actually challenges me. I forgot about it within a day. 3 weeks later, my manager pulled me into a meeting I assumed was about a missed report. Instead, she told me corporate was starting a new cross-department project and wanted me to lead the Ohio side of it. She said my attention to detail had come up in a meeting I wasn't even in. I sat there stunned, not because it was some miracle, but because it lined up so precisely with what I'd written down and then completely forgotten about. I told myself it was coincidence. Hard work eventually gets noticed, I reasoned. That's not magic, that's cause and effect. And that explanation held up fine, until it happened again. And again, in smaller, quieter ways I started noticing only because I was, for the first time, paying attention. That's when the discomfort started. Not fear exactly. More like the feeling you get when a magic trick almost fools you, and part of you wants to know how it's done, and another part of you wants to stay unimpressed so you don't have to rethink anything. I started asking Dana questions, half out of curiosity, half hoping she'd say something ridiculous enough to let me stop taking it seriously. Instead, she said something that stuck with me. She told me manifestation, to her, wasn't about wishing on stars. It was about deciding what you wanted clearly enough that your brain stopped filtering it out. I didn't understand what she meant at first. So I looked into it, quietly, almost embarrassed to be doing the research. I wasn't reading spiritual blogs. I was reading about attention and cognition, about something called the reticular activating system, a part of the brain that filters incoming information and decides what's worth your conscious notice. Turns out, when you fixate on a goal or a specific outcome, your brain starts flagging related opportunities that were there all along, just previously ignored as background noise. Buy a red car, suddenly you see red cars everywhere. Not because more red cars appeared. Because your brain finally started letting you see them. That was the turning point for me, though it didn't feel dramatic when it happened. It felt more like a quiet click. I realized I hadn't discovered anything mystical. I just accidentally stumbled onto a mechanism I'd been ignoring my whole life, a way that clarity of intention changes what you notice, and what you notice changes what you act on, and what you act on changes what actually happens to you. I started testing it, almost like an experiment, because that felt safer than admitting I believed in something. I picked a specific, narrow goal, nothing grand, just wanting to reconnect with an old friend I'd lost touch with. I wrote it down, thought about it for a few minutes before bed, and then genuinely forgot about it, the way you do. 4 days later, she texted me out of nowhere. Said my name had come up in a conversation and she'd been meaning to reach out. I sat there holding my phone, feeling that same unsettled curiosity from before. I wasn't ready to call it manifestation. But I also couldn't call it nothing. What changed after that wasn't my belief in magic. It was my belief in myself, in a strange, backdoor kind of way. I started to understand that most of my life, I'd been walking around with vague, unspoken wants, and vague wants don't get noticed by anyone, including my own brain. I'd assumed the world just handed things to certain people and withheld them from others, and that assumption had quietly kept me passive for years. I wasn't failing to get what I wanted because the universe was against me. I was failing because I'd never once been specific enough, honest enough, or attentive enough to actually go after it. That realization sat uncomfortably with me for a while. There was a strange grief in it, if I'm honest. If my old assumptions weren't true, that meant I couldn't blame circumstances anymore for things I hadn't tried to change. It's easier to believe you're a victim of randomness than to admit you've been sleepwalking through your own choices. I also started noticing it in other people, once I knew what to look for. My coworker who constantly complained about never getting a break also never applied for anything, never asked for anything, never named what he actually wanted out loud. It wasn't that the universe was punishing him. He'd simply never given his own mind a clear target to move toward. I used to think people like Dana were lucky. Now I think they were just specific. I started writing things down the way she did, not out of belief in cosmic forces, but because I understood, finally, what the practice was actually doing. It wasn't ordering the universe around. It was training my own attention, sharpening what I let myself notice, forcing me to admit what I actually wanted instead of drifting through my days on autopilot. By the end of that year, I'd taken the cross-department role permanently. I'd reconnected with 2 old friends. I'd stopped assuming good things happened to other people by accident and bad things happened to me by design. None of it felt like magic by the time I understood it. It felt like waking up to a part of my own mind I'd never bothered to use. I still don't fully know where the line is between coincidence and this kind of quiet, internal recalibration. Maybe there isn't a clean line at all. Maybe belief and attention and effort are more tangled together than any of us want to admit, especially people like me, who like our explanations tidy and provable. What I do know is this: the version of me who mocked Dana's sticky notes wasn't smarter than her. He was just less willing to look foolish in front of himself. And somewhere between the notebook and the promotion and the friend who texted me out of nowhere, I stopped needing to be right about how the world worked, and started paying closer attention to how my own mind did. I wonder sometimes how many things I wanted, quietly, for years, and never got, simply because I never let myself say them clearly, not even to myself. I wonder how many people are walking past their own version of that cross-department meeting right now, distracted, unfocused, waiting for life to hand them something they've never actually named. Maybe the real question isn't whether manifestation is real. Maybe it's this: what are you not letting yourself want out loud?